Get your tickets now for the 23rd annual edition of the OUTshine LGBTQ Plus Film Festival happening April 23rd to May 2nd. Don't miss our incredible grand opening drive-in event followed by 10 days of non-stop films from here and all around the world that you can watch at home. Watch trailers and get your tickets at OUTshineFilm.com now.
Hey, all you Outshiners, that music always gets me going. Hope it does you too as well. Welcome to the Q&A for the wonderful film On the Fringe of Wild. We're very excited to talk to some of the cast and crew, so stick with us. I do have a couple quick housekeeping announcements. A big thank you to Gilead, Miami-Dade County. They are some presenting sponsors, and without them, we couldn't do what we do. I always say thank you not only for what you give to the festival, but what you give to the community in general. So thank you so much. Also, a big thank you to our producer circle members. We always say that membership does have its privileges. I think that's an old Amex tale, but it fits here. They really do get benefits, and they sustain us throughout the year. So thank you to the producer circles. If you'd like more information on either of those, any of the films we're screening, go to OUTshineFilm.com, and you can find out more information. Over 80 wonderful films throughout the 10 days, and we'd love to see you again. But we are very, very excited to have with us, as I mentioned, the cast and crew of On the Fringe of Wild. We have the the director, Emma Catafalmo. Emma, thank you so much for joining us. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you, Joe?
Good. We look forward to talking more to you and your cast. So Thank you for being with us. Speaking of cast, we have with us Harrison Brown, who plays Peter.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Welcome. Thanks again for your time. Also with us, Cameron Stewart plays Jack.
Hi there.
Cameron, and finally, we have Michael Mello plays Miles. Hi. Everybody's joining us from the far north of Canada, our brethren to the north. So thank you so much. All right, let's start at the start. I'll start with Emma. I think the film was written by Sorel Duchette, and you did not write it. So how did you come to be? Tell me about the story, because I know you're the conception of the film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's kind of interesting because how it came to be is sort of unusual. It was sort of the reverse of how things usually work. So I actually started writing the script myself because I came up with a story, and I got about 55 or so pages into the script, where I then got totally stuck, and I was like, I can't, write anymore. And I wasn't convinced that, what I was writing was, doing justice to the story. So I then went on a search to, get help from a professional screenwriter, which is where I then went and connected myself with many Canadian screenwriters. And after a series of interviews and, going through sample writing and stuff like that, I then landed on Sorel because I felt like her work would best fit both my aesthetic as a director and also the story that I was trying to tell. So then Sorel and I, of course, worked on the script with her rewriting the screenplay with my story. And then, after drafts of that, that's how we ended up coming to what would be known as, the final screenplay for On the Fringe of Wild.
Which I think is fascinating. I think that says a lot about you, the fact that you're like, I have this story, but I can't, it's just not where I want it to go. And so you brought in a writer. I think that says a lot for you. Talk a little bit about that sort of, was the film that we saw the script that was produced, or did things sort of morph? I know you talked in the beginning that it sort of morphed, but was it continually morphing, or is the story sort of similar to what we would have read in the final script, say?
I mean, the story itself, the essence of the story and the plot points are definitely the same as the final script, but there were changes in set, yes, in terms of dialogue and in terms of some of the action. There was some collaboration, especially with the three leads who are here today. We discussed some things and changed some things as we went, feeling if some words or actions didn't feel quite organic enough, then they were tweaked.
Oh, good. And I want to come back to that in a little bit about the collaboration, because I think that's also an important distinction. And again, I think a sign of a good director. So finally, talk about the process, like start to finish. We call it soup to nuts or A to Z. How long was the process? And talk a little bit where you might have, hit some snags. Like, did the post take longer, or, just talk a little bit about the process of the film.
Sure. I mean, absolutely. The process was quite quick. So for the most part, as soon as I began writing, and then of course subsequently, enlisted a writer to rewrite my story, things moved quite fast. And then of course, once we got into pre-production, things started moving really fast because we knew that we wanted to shoot that winter. So we started pre-production in September 2019, and we went up to North Bay. The key crew went up to North Bay, Ontario at the end of February 2020. So it was only, like 5 or so months, right, between the start of pre-production and the beginning of production that happened. But after we had shot the film, because, we essentially shot the film, and then as soon as we got back to Toronto, a few days later, the entire country went into shutdown because of the pandemic. And because of that, post-production was a bit drawn out because it had to be done all, remotely. We had social distancing. We had, so it all had to be virtual. I had to virtually conference with my editors and, my composers and my color, I only had to, for the most part, I had to do as much as we could virtually or, over the phone or via email.
It's interesting because, and you just also touched upon a couple things that I want to come back to later, the winter setting and COVID and the effects it had. But let's sort of switch to Harrison, Cameron, and Michael and the actors. And can you each talk about how you got involved in the project? Was it the traditional, an agent sent you a script, or somebody you somehow sent, or were you just sitting in a coffee shop and Emma walked in? You hear those stories as well. But let's start with Harrison, then we'll go to Cameron, then we'll go to Michael. Talk a little about how you got involved.
Yeah. So for me, how I got involved, there's a site called Casting Workbook, and you can go and you can check out different breakdowns for scenes. So this was something that my agent hadn't really looked into, and I saw it. I saw the breakdown, and I immediately was drawn to it. I'm a transgender actor, and I'm part of the LGBTQ+ community. So anytime that I can jump on an LGBTQ+ film, I'm all for it. So yeah, I submitted myself for it. Went through the traditional audition process with Emma. Had a callback, a couple of chemistry reads with Michael and Cameron, and from there it was I was cast, and I was able to participate in this amazing project.
Cameron?
Oh yeah. My way of getting into this was a little different. I worked on a project previously with one of the producers, Eric Brazzari, and I did a short film with him, and we got to know each other. And so when he was aware of this film and the audition process was happening, he told me about it. And I was like, yeah, of course, I'd love to work with you again. And also I enjoyed the subject matter of the script. And so I went in, and I can't remember if I actually read for Jack. I mean, I did read for Jack, but I don't know if I came in for Jack. I ended up reading for Peter and Jack, actually all the characters, and was just really grateful that they seemed to like me.
And Michael.
Yeah, so I actually have never done a project like this. I come from a very heavy comedy background, and I used to do like stand-up comedy here and things like that. But my friends saw the casting posting, and it just said like LGBT actors, and like as a gay man, I just was very excited to see projects that always like represent the community. So threw my name into the hat, got a audition, and then I got a call back, and I actually originally auditioned for the role of Jack. And then I ended up having some screen tests with these two, and then they gave me the sides for Miles. And then, yeah, I felt so excited to get the role and to dive into such a meaty character.
Yeah, that sort of leads into my next question. So you get the script, and were you like, yeah, I'm all in, or were there some hesitations? And it sounds like most of you had no hesitations that it was a gay or lesbian project, but just it is a very intense sort of story. So can you talk a little bit about that, like the yes, count me in, or a little any hesitancy?
Yeah, I think for the second round, like for the chemistry reads, we were able to get the full script. And that's when you could really sink your teeth into what the characters were going through. And obviously, yeah, the subject matter is very heavy. And it was something that I thought was really important to really do it justice and to really take these roles seriously. Yeah, I didn't have to get convinced at all. As soon as I read the script, I was like, count me in. This is such a cool character to dive into.
Yeah, I read, after reading the script, I thought it was so interesting. I actually was really drawn to the character of Miles too. I've always been so fascinated with characters in media. Of course, they're real life people as well, of these people who put on this front of, I'm straight and I'm so straight and I'm going to bully you because I have this secret. And I always find those characters to be so interesting on screen. And Michael obviously did a fantastic job. But yeah, the story itself was just a really great story that I'm lucky to be a part of.
Yeah, to jump behind that, I actually when I first read the script, I was so invested into the role of Jack that Miles kind of just like brushed by. I was like, he's got his own problems. Like, let's let that actor deal with that. And I just remember, so I actually only read for Miles once at the audition, and it was with Cameron. They had us swapping back and forth between the two roles. And when I was offered the role, I really did a deep dive on the character of Miles, and I was like, whoa, this is such, this character has so many like levels and places that I could take it. But I think also as a gay actor, there are certain words that he uses in this film that I always felt so weird, like that I had to say as someone who's in the community. But I almost then realized like it's better that I take on a role like this that's so sensitive and things like that, knowing the impacts it can have on my fellow LGBTQ plus community members. And hopefully I can take this role and really take it to a place that resonates with people who might have similar experiences.
Yeah, that's great. That's a super place to come from. Emma, well into Emma and the cast. I know you're a content provider. You've done a lot of work. You've done shorts. But I think this is your first feature, and I think it's fairly new. I know Michael, again, has done some hosting duties and, as you said, a stand-up comedy. So you all sort of have a different background that you brought, but it's sort of a first, what I'll call, bigger feature film. Can you talk a little bit about that, sort of how that impacted the film? Was it, sometimes that's very freeing to people, and other times it can be somewhat confining. So if you can all sort of talk a little bit about that, sort of the newness that you all brought to the situation.
I mean, absolutely. It was a really interesting experience. You're absolutely right. It was my first. This is my first feature film as a director. I had only done shorts before, and it was really interesting process because, of course, it is like a short film in many ways, but at the same time, everything is on, a huge scale, right? Everything is so much grander. The story arcs are so much grander. There are so many more setups that you have to do, so many more scenes, the shooting days, there are so many more shooting days to consider. So these are all things that, that you have to adapt to. And I think that the most important thing really is to always keep in mind, in order to keep the performances authentic and to keep the story authentic throughout this, larger scale, is like, what is the motivation, right, for each character? in you know, in a macro sense of course throughout the entire film, but also, you know, in each scene, and you know, in some cases even in each line, right? You know, what do they want and what do they need, and what is everyone trying to get in each scenario and interaction with each other.
Anyone else on the cast? Cameron?
Yeah, for me, this was the longest I've ever filmed one project. I've done some shorts and other things, and it's usually 3 days maximum. And it was really great that we all got to go up to North Bay, and we all stayed in a hotel together and spent 2 weeks on this project every single day, at least for Harrison and I. And it felt like camp. Like there was a camp aspect of it that was really nice. I've never got to be around people that much all the time for such long days. So it was an experience in itself to sort of have to develop these relationships with people, especially professional relationships. And it was also a very new experience to be a lead of a project like this. And for me, it was a practice in setting a good example and knowing that if I'm a lead on this project, then I have to I have to be happy and come with a good attitude and stuff, or else it could really bring a project down. And that was a new endeavor for me.
Yeah, I think for me, this was my first feature as well. I had never spent 2 weeks with my acting castmates. I was a hockey player before, so I understood like the teamwork aspect, but I'd never seen it in acting. So it was really fun to come onto set and to just connect with the castmates and just become friends with Cameron and with Michael, and really work on like the collaboration aspect of it, especially with Emma too. And being a lead, yeah, it comes with the territory, and just being able to sink into characters together. I'd done shorter things where I wasn't a lead, so I didn't feel comfortable really sharing ideas on what to do for the scenes. So it was really cool to have that experience with Emma and my castmates and just make it together.
I also feel with us having like 2 weeks time, it was so nice to build that trust and foundation. Because I come from a comedy background, I think I was very critical of how I was taking my character with his more in-depth scenes and making sure it wasn't comedic, but I felt so supportive from my castmates. There's the one party scene where I just like lose my mind and started screaming. And I remember Harrison after like tapped me on the shoulder and it was like, "You're killing it." And it was like a nice feeling as like your first project, especially someone who like is so used to trying to make people laugh. It was nice to have such a relaxed experience on set and feel super supported to experiment with my scenes.
Yeah, I love to hear these stories, and thank you for bringing them to light. It's particularly Harrison and Cameron, and Emma might interject, but your relationship is certainly pivotal to the story. We have to believe that you are in a relationship and that you care for each other, you love each other. How did you manage to make that happen? I mean, was it natural? Was, you know, Emma sort of, no, more love, you know? Talk a little about that. And it might have been the 2 weeks that you spent together, but I'm just really, I'm fascinated by these, you know, relationships on screen. They're just so believable. You're like,
well, the spending time together was definitely a big part of it. Also, Harrison's just such a great guy. How could you not, you know, fall in love with him?
Yeah.
But I really think it just came from coming in there and being professional with one another, and then just allowing that to kind of develop into a friendship. There was a night that Harrison, Michael, and I and the other one of the other actresses, Andrea, we all kind of like got together just as like the cast, and we just kind of like chatted about things and talked one of the nights. And I think that night in particular for me really helped me bond a close connection with everyone, and we asked each other personal questions and things like that, and that really helped me get to know Harrison a little better, and I could fall in love with both Harrison and Peter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think getting to know each other offset and talking and the late night chats and the hotel rooms. Yeah, those are definitely great. But I think like just the communication that Cameron and I had before, like do intense scenes. Like we had some really, really intense scenes that we had to really go through the thick of it together. And we talked about boundaries. We talked about what we needed from each other. And it was a really collaborative environment, especially with Emma and Michael as well. Every scene that we were in, we were able to just talk things out and really feel comfortable with each other and feel safe. I just felt like I trusted everybody on the set, for sure.
Emma's shaking her head, agreement. So
yeah, no, I was gonna say the same thing. Like I think that it was just, you know, I mean, of course, I can't speak completely to the experience because I wasn't the one involved in the scenes, but at the same time, you know, like I think that there was just, you know, open communication, which established, you know, a level of trust, which allowed for, you know, for feelings to be explored and for things, you know, for people to take risks and, yeah, like Harrison touched upon, in a safe environment, right?
All right, let's shift to Michael. You had this you're walking this fine line between being this, you know, macho jerk that nobody really likes, yet we all understand, and we had to sort of empathize with you, because if we didn't empathize with you, it was over. We didn't care. You know, we sort of knew your position. Luckily, many of us find ourselves in it. Luckily, many of us don't. But that, you know, and I think Cameron referred to it being this overly macho because you aren't overly macho. So how did you walk that fine line and make both parts of you sort of believable and yet empathetic?
Yeah, I think it was a super interesting experience because when I first read the script, I just wrote him off as like villainous, evil guy, you know? And then once you get to read all his scenes, you understand. And I think this applies to any character, any person, that you'd never really know what someone's going through. And so putting myself in that experience to ensure that, you know, I think at the end of the day, all he wants is acceptance, but it feels very hard to do so. So you put on that tough front. And I think a lot of members of the community can relate to that in some retrospect. Like sometimes we have to put on these personas of ourselves in front of other people. And so finding the vulnerability in that and just reminding myself that no matter what this character is showing or saying, like I can do so much by showing what's inside, and hopefully that would translate well with the struggle the character goes on through this journey.
And that it did. I commend you on that. Emma, we talked earlier about the winter. You said you shot in the winter, which I assume is purposeful. Yeah. It's such a part of the film. It's the mood. It's the atmosphere. I don't think the right word is somber, but it just sort of sets the tone and the mood. And I guess this North Bay place is somewhat magical because, and I'm sure you'll sort of defer to your DOP. It was phenomenal. Can you talk a little bit about that aspect of the film?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you said it yourself. Totally. It wasn't an accident that we chose to shoot the film in winter. It was definitely a conscious choice. And the reason why was because, you know, in the story, we wanted to have the, you know, exterior environment that these young men are living in, right, reflect sort of this, like, the internal environment, the societal environment they're living in, right? So really, you know, stark and isolating and you know, melancholy, because of course, you know, they're isolated through, you know, the bigotry that they experience, right? So it's that was the intention, right? It's a visual metaphor essentially. So that was the reasoning behind that. And of course, you know, with Gabriella's, you know, choices, and you know, we collaborated on color palettes, but she had some really great ideas also, like to shoot anamorphic, which was brilliant because it really brought to life those landscapes. You know, you could really just see how expansive they are and, you know, empty. And the color palettes of, you know, these cool tones, blues, grays, whites, green, a little bit of green, that's kind of like sickly yellow sometimes, these kinds of colors, right? Just to really drive home those, this like almost eerie, uncomfortable environment, right?
Yeah.
So she just did a wonderful job with the photography, the cinematography of the film.
And you used many of the great words I was trying to think of. So thank you. And also, let's not forgive the fact that it's a female DOP, which is rare in the business. And it's phenomenal. And I hope people realize that. And there's many, things you should be grateful for. Being a woman director, using a GLBT cast, transgender. It's so, I think that itself should be heralded and celebrated. So thank you for that. You mentioned earlier about COVID and the effects it had. Mm-hmm. And talk a little about where you think that affected it most. Was it in post-production, it sounds like? Was it after like the film was done and now we're trying to get it seen? Talk a little bit about the effects.
Yeah, so definitely we were miraculously lucky in the sense that we were able to finish production, right before our entire country shut down, like a week before the entire country shut down. So, we basically returned all the equipment and all the art and props and everything. And then, 2 days later, we went into quarantine. So production wasn't affected too much, but post was greatly affected because I was so used to in previous experiences being able to like sit in editing sessions and in with my composers and stuff and really being involved physically in the process, but everything had to be virtual for the most part, except for, when it was absolutely necessary for me to be there, in the finishing points. So that was strange, and it drew out the process a little bit. And then now, yes, we're starting our festival run. This is our world premiere. And it is different because, like, of course, rather than us being in Miami right now, we're doing this virtually. So, that's something to consider. And then, I guess it'll also, I don't know what it'll do for distribution, but we'll, I imagine that, it'll probably be more, streaming likely than, a traditional sort of exhibition.
Yeah. And, we always say as long as the film gets seen, if that's streaming, that's streaming. We just hope a film like this gets seen and the majority of people, and especially the people who need to see it, do get to see it. So we love what you all did, and we look forward to seeing more. So we only have time for a couple more questions, but that'll be one of the questions is, what are you working on? What might we look for you in next? Emma, what you got going? I know COVID might have, again, halted some of our plans, but...
Yeah, so I mean, at the moment, I'm, I've been pretty busy with, finishing the film first, and then now I've been, starting managing the festival run and, distribution, and I've also been working on the social media. I've been managing our social media accounts for the production company, my production company, but I have started thinking about, my next project, and for my next film, I do want to, really give it a try this time to write it myself. And I think that what I'll do is I would like to write something about female sexuality this time and from a queer perspective. I'm not entirely sure what that's going to be. I have a few different ideas bouncing around my head, but that's sort of like the main, theme that ties them all together is, kind of like queer female sexuality. So we'll see what that turns into.
Well, good luck. We hope you keep moving forward on it. Harrison?
Yeah, for me, just auditioning, staying busy. I recently finished filming a television show. It'll be on FX. It's called Why the Last Man. And I played a transgender man, and I shared a scene with 3 other trans men. So I'm not sure if that's historic, but it was a really cool experience to be around really like-minded peers and to be on my first television show. So I'm looking forward to that coming out in the next few months.
Whether it's historic or not, it's still important. So we're glad you had that, and we're excited to share that experience with you. So, Cameron.
Well, during these pandemic times, productivity kind of goes here and it completely drops to the bottom. So I'm working on a few of my own projects at the moment, just trying to write and be creative and stay creative, and then just doing the audition process, trying to see what comes up. I'm actually filming in a few days a sort of a reenactment docu-series about the 90s and the music industry in the 90s. I believe it will be on Vice, but who knows how long these things sort of take.
Cool. Rock out. All right. Michael, you going back to funny guy or?
Yeah, I definitely jumped back right into comedy, which I'm very happy about. I definitely will still explore more dramatics in the future. But right now, honestly, doing comedy through TikTok, which has been such an interesting experience, it's really, I'm fortunate that I'm having people watch there and that it's a nice way to get your comedy out without having to, break social distancing rules and things like that. But same here, auditioning, mostly focusing on digital content and tailoring to my comedy side, but for sure still looking for more media roles for the future, and we'll see where that takes.
Well, again, we're excited to see what comes next. My final question is sort of bringing it back down. What do you want people to take away from the film? It is so engaging and so powerful, and a lot of these adjectives I could keep going with, but what do you hope people who see the film take away from it? Let's start with Emma.
Well, I mean, this film is particularly special to me because it deals with, some very relevant subject matter. And I mean, although the film is set in the early 2000s, it's just as relevant today as it was then. The intersection between mental health issues and LGBTQ identity. Sadly, especially in pandemic times, mental health is such a it's such a prominent issue right now. And we see that you think that in the last, because so many advancements have been made in the community in the last 15 to 20 years, you would think that things have changed drastically, but unfortunately, like, the LGBTQ youth is still one of the largest demographics for suicide attempts. So I think that that's something that's really important to make people aware of. And I think that's something that's, it's paramount that we open a positive dialogue about that issue, and make people aware that it's okay to be your authentic self, and you have to embrace that, and you don't let anyone tell you differently, right?
Amen, Emma. Thank you. Harrison, anything to add?
Yeah, I think Emma hits the nail right on the head. Mental health is a big takeaway, and just knowing that you're not alone and don't be afraid to reach out for help. But I think a really big theme that I think is really important in this film is familial support, and how much a parental influence can have. If they don't accept their child, or if they accept their child, it can really influence that child's life and their self-worth. Having a supportive parent can really change, and it can really save somebody's life that's going through some struggles. So I think if any parents that are watching that, and it maybe changes their view on how to maybe treat their kid or how to accept their kid, I think that this film can really do a great job in highlighting how important that is in a child's life.
And a big amen to Harrison as well. It's like Sunday church here. Thank you so much. I'm agreeing with everyone. Cameron.
Well, Harrison stole what I was about to say, which was it starts at home. And really the way you sort of treat things to your child can really affect them, and your approval and disapproval and things can shape who they are, and they can either their children can either go through any of the horrible kind of scenarios that sort of happen within these films. But I guess also just to not hide who you are, and to really get to see these characters like Miles and stuff of putting up this front. You're never going to be as happy as if you just kind of accept yourself first.
Mhm.
Perfectly said. Michael.
I think for me, something that I hope comes across is just that we all have our own story. And I think especially through my character, Miles, we realize that you truly don't know what someone else is going through. And it's unfortunate that sometimes we lash out on other people because we have our own things going on. But I just hope that this movie, especially during these times, is a reminder that we need to always show people compassion and kindness because we don't know what's going on behind the scenes and where that could potentially lead to at the end.
Wow, so well said. I'd love to keep going on and on and on, but unfortunately we're out of time. Emma, Harrison, Cameron, Michael, thank you so much for your time. Keep making work, keep coming back, and hopefully next time we'll be able to have you in person.
Yes, thank you.
I'd love to.
Yeah.
Yeah, good luck with the film, and again, thank you. It is a powerful message, and you brought it to life. We're so happy. Difficult subject matter, but again, something really important that needed to be seen, needed to be said, and you all did it so eloquently. Thank you again on the Fringe of Wild cast and crew. Take care and stay safe. And again, we do look forward to having you again, hopefully in person.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Take care.